Imagine one morning you wake up and discover something absolutely crazy. You and your next door neighbor are physically connected and inseparable, such as conjoined twins. So you must do everything together now. For anybody, this would be very debilitating and definitely decrease their quality of life. You learn that if you decide to disconnect, your neighbor will die, but you will survive. However, in 5 minutes, you guys will be disconnected again and be able to live your normal lives. So basically, anyone would stick it out for the 5 minutes, but what if it was 9 months? Or what if you were connected to your mom or dad for 9 months, or someone you really love and care about? Or what about a complete stranger? These hypothetical scenarios can be manipulated and altered countless times, and they make for an interesting discussion. They also connect to Jarvis Thomson's bodily rights view of abortion. And Thomson believes that in this argument, one should be allowed to disconnect because their bodily rights are more important than the life of the fetus. So, hello, my name is Matthew Ventola, and I'm going to be covering Judas Jarvis Thomson's bodily rights on abortion. And I will inform the audience about the rights by discussing her initial pro-choice argument, the violinist scenario, and the burglar scenario argument by analogy, Judas Jarvis Thomson's alternative definition of abortion, and then the people seeds argument. And I explain that Thomson argues that abortion is morally permissible because bodily rights must be protected. So firstly, I'm going to cover Thomson's initial argument about abortion, which is pro-choice. And her pro-choice argument is very interesting because she does something that not many other pro-choicers admit to or even try to do, because she believes that a fetus has a serious moral right to life at conception. So most of the pro-choice arguments will revolve around dates during the pregnancy and being like, oh, well, a fetus can't, feel pain until week whatever, so you can get an abortion before week whatever, or a fetus doesn't have a brain before whatever, things like that. But she believes that the fetus has a serious moral right to life at conception. And basically, what she uses to kind of prove her point is that although it has a moral right to life, bodily rights are still more important. So the argument goes, as soon as a fetus is conceived, it has a serious moral right to life. And she compares a fetus to an acorn by saying, everyone knows that an acorn will eventually sprout up and become, a large oak tree. Similarly to how people know that a zygote, or just a singular cell at conception, will transform into an adult human. And it is morally impermissible to kill a fetus, but it is morally permissible to receive an abortion. So a little bit complicated there, but it's kind of a post-conventional way of thinking in that she believes that although fetuses do have a serious moral right to life, the bodily rights of the pregnant woman are more important than that right to life from the fetus. So next I'm going to cover Judas Jarvis Thomson's violinist scenario and burglar scenario, which are slightly different, but they both deal with bodily rights and the idea of my body, my choice. So the violinist scenario is very similar to the scenario I brought up in the introduction. So imagine if somebody woke up one morning and discovered that they were connected to a violinist, and that if they disconnect, the violinist will die. And kind of the moral question or dilemma is do you have a moral right to stay attached to save a life? And Thomson argues that it is morally permissible for the person to detach because they should not have to sacrifice their own bodily autonomy to keep the violinist alive. And this kind of connects to abortion because pregnant women are similarly attached to their fetus. And if they, detach from their fetus, the fetus will die. And she believes that they should be able to detach and let the fetus die to preserve their bodily autonomy. And then in the burglar argument, she takes the violinist argument a little bit further. So like imagine someone leaves their window open and then a burglar comes into the house, like through the window. And the question is, do you have a moral right to kick the burglar out of your house? And Thomson believes that you do have a moral right to kick them out of your house. And similarly to an abortion, it's morally permissible for a mother to get an abortion due to an accidental pregnancy, which is a similar scenario to the burglar just coming in through the window unannounced. So this next argument is probably the most difficult to understand. It's pretty abstract and kind of hard to wrap your mind around at first, but if you can do it, then it does make a lot of sense, morally and philosophically. So this is Thomson's alternative definition of abortion. So basically she asks us to revisit the violinist argument and the burglar argument that we just discussed, and she argues that it is morally permissible for you to detach from the violinist in the first one, and it's morally permissible to kick the burglar out of your house in the second one. And if you connect this to abortion, this means that performing those actions results in the death of an unborn child. But Thomson does not believe that you should murder the violinist or the burglar, and similarly to abortion, you should not murder the fetus. So it's a little hard, but basically, imagine if you detach from the violinist, even though they told you if you detach from the violinist will die. But imagine you detach from the violinist and they magically somehow survive. Would it be morally permissible to then pull out a gun and shoot them? Obviously, absolutely not. And similarly to the burglar one, imagine if the burglar breaks into your home and you ask him to leave, is it morally permissible to kill the burglar? No. And similarly to abortion, it is morally permissible to let the child die, but not to murder the child. So if you get an abortion, and obviously the child will not die in real life, but like morally or hypothetically speaking, if you get an abortion and the child survives, it is not morally permissible to then kill the child. But getting an abortion is pretty much equivalent not to murdering a fetus, but to instead let it die. So the last argument from Thomson that I'm going to cover is the people seeds scenario and the people seeds argument by analogy. And this is probably Thomson's most fleshed out argument because it connects very specifically to abortion. So I'm going to provide a drawing that I made to illustrate the people seeds scenario. Basically, it's similar to the burglar argument in that imagine someone leaves their window open to let in some cool air. And there is a hypothetical tree outside that's producing people seeds. And the person has a screen on their window that lets in only 1% of the people seeds. So it's 99% effective against letting in people seeds. But despite this, a people seed goes through the window anyway and embeds itself in the carpet. And the question is it morally permissible for the owner to dispose of the seed? Because she doesn't want the seed in her house. And it flew through her window even though her screen was 99% effective. So Thomson believes that it's morally permissible for the owner to dispose of the seed, even though it only had a 1% chance of coming through the window. And this connects to abortion because if a fetus still becomes present after using contraception that's 99% effective, Thomson believes it's still morally permissible to have an abortion in that case. In conclusion, Judas Jarvis Thomson argues that it's morally permissible for a woman to get an abortion at any point in the pregnancy because of the protection of her bodily rights. So firstly, I discussed her pro-choice argument, which is very unique because it admits that a fetus is a human from conception, which is usually used by pro-lifers as a basis for their argument, but she spins it and makes it work. And this is because her alternative definition of abortion deals with the terms killing and letting die. And Thomson believes that getting an abortion is not the same as killing a fetus, rather it is letting it die. Next, she presents her violinist scenario and burglar arguments, and these both also believe in bodily rights as the sole determinant, or the most important determinant, I guess. And Thomson believes that in the violinist scenario, it's morally permissible to detach from the violinist at any time because one should not have to sacrifice their bodily autonomy to keep someone else alive. And then in the burglar argument, Thomson thinks that it's morally permissible to kick out the burglar, just as it's morally permissible to get an abortion because the burglar did not have consent to enter. And then lastly, she presents her people seeds argument, which connects to abortion regarding contraceptives. And she believes that it's morally permissible in this scenario to kick out the people seed, even though it only had a 1% chance of getting into the home. Similarly to if you have sexual intercourse and use a condom or are on both birth control or some other form of contraception and the woman still gets pregnant, even though they only had a 1% chance of getting pregnant, then it would be morally permissible to have an abortion at that point. So I just want everyone who watches this video to kind of reflect and think about what they think of abortion. Do you agree with Judas Jarvis Thomson? Do you agree with some of her points but not all of them? Or are you completely against it and believe in pro-life? Thank you for listening, and I am Matthew Ventola, and have a great day.